Thank you, Ali, for the kind introduction. Until relatively recently, I hadn't spent a lot of time thinking about cherries, until I saw the opportunity. And this is where I'm very grateful to the Nuffield Farming Scholarships Trust and to my sponsors, Malcolm Isaac and the Royal Highland and Agricultural Society of Scotland, for affording me the chance to explore this exciting opportunity. And also to my employers, Angus Soft Fruits, for giving me the time away to look into this. We've heard a lot about broad-acre cropping systems, and that's vital because it's how we will feed a growing world population. And it's also what most of our soils and conditions are best suited to. But what if there was a luxury niche that we are capable of fulfilling in our conditions? What if I was to tell you that lateness of ripening is actually an advantage in this situation rather than a drawback that we're familiar with in the northern half of the country? And if I was to tell you that this product could be produced with less of the labor intensiveness required in some other high-value products that we're familiar with working with. And it's good for you. So I better start backing these claims up. This box is filled with premium Tasmanian cherries, which are sold to Asian markets. It's known as the Louis Vuitton of cherries, not just because of the price, but because of counterfeiting. In 20 years in fresh produce, I've never come across counterfeiting. This box, once it's been sold, used, it gets returned to some unscrupulous traders in certain countries, and it's refilled with cheaper Chilean sea freight cherries instead of the premium Tasmanian air freight equivalent. These guys at Reed Fruits have had to find a way to counteract this problem. This 3D barcode will scan once, and the first time you scan it, it will congratulate you on the authenticity of the product. The second time, you're out of luck. I spoke of improved labor utilization over some of the other high-value products we're familiar with in my part of the world. We often express yield in terms of, say, kilograms per tree. Are trees really our limiting factor? Probably not, because we can grow more of them. We often express financial performance per hectare. In this niche market, is land our limiting factor? Maybe. In high-value horticulture, is labor our limiting factor? Absolutely, and we've just experienced one of the most difficult summers we've had on that front. So I decided to express the productivity in terms of the value of crop picked per hour relative to the labor cost. In cherries, that return is 9 or 10-fold. Compare that to blueberries, which is one of our fastest growing product areas, where that is actually only 3 or 4-fold. Raspberries, it's around 5, and the only other competing product was strawberries at another 9 or 10-fold. We're in a declining labor market, so we need to start thinking about figures like this when we're making our long-term decisions on what to plant. I spoke that later is better. This chart maps the cherry retail price across the course of the summer. It's broadly divided into 3. The first third shows a relatively stable price, primarily made up of European imports. The middle third shows, again, pretty stable prices, but they will be depressed in a year of oversupply. And this is the main UK season. It's very short, it only lasts a month, and that's because cherries have a very concentrated flowering period. There are also challenges with producing outside that window, which we'll come to. Then, the last part is the exciting part. Look what happens every single year on the 15th of August, and this year was no exception, although it's not on the chart. the price goes up, and this is where our opportunity is. I spoke of cherries and health. All through history, it's been written of the benefits of cherries to people's health. And looking on the web, a quick web search now will show benefits from reducing cholesterol, improved sleep, diuretic properties, a cure for gout, reduced stroke risk, and so on. Just don't do what one chap did in the UK this summer and eat the stones. The stones contain cyanide, and he ended up in hospital. And I think he was trying to prove a point. Not a good way to go. He survived, though. So, I mentioned challenges. There are three main areas of challenge that I discovered on my journey that we need to resolve: knowledge and experience, keeping rain off, and selecting appropriate varieties. In terms of knowledge and experience, this slide shows photos of simple cherry production systems in 3 continents of the world. This really concentrated my mind, because in some parts of the world we have an oversupply of knowledge, experience, and advice. And growers can be at risk of mixing and matching and confusing those sources and trying to do something that's not going to work. In our part of the world, it's the opposite problem. We don't really have enough sources of commercial advice, in my region in particular. But from these photos and these farms, I learned that all we need to do is follow something that's tried and tested. And if we want to do some fine-tuning and develop some of the new exciting plantation layout systems, we can do that once we've got our own experience. The tree will basically grow, and we can keep it simple. I spoke about climate control. In berries, we try to keep the rain off using systems that also keep the heat in. We don't want to keep the heat in when we're trying to delay the ripening of this product for that window that I showed you. In Tasmania, this farm is at high altitude, and I was very fortunate to see the foundations being laid for the top of the range covering system, which will look like this eventually. It's a Cravo retractable roofing system. The benefit is that the covering can automatically be closed when rain comes, and it'll automatically reopen when the rain stops. The other 95% of the time, the trees are freely vented. There's no buildup of heat, and the delay factor comes in that we're looking for. It's too expensive, in my opinion, for most systems. So it was in Norway where I saw good use being made of much more freely available systems that we're familiar with in this part of the world. The high-legged hay grove tunnel, allowing the tree to grow to a reasonable height and still allowing lots of ventilation. And the Vuitton covering system, a series of overlapping plastic strips which shed the rain into the middle between the rows but freely let the wind through. Why Norway? Well, growers like to see things operating in their own harsh conditions. You can see these systems all over Europe, but actually coming from Scotland, seeing these systems clinging to the steep sides of Norwegian fjords, exposed to 80-mile-an-hour winds, really gave me the confidence to know that we can do this back home. I spoke about varieties. One of the challenges with the ultra-late season varieties that are currently available is that would push our ripening into September when we have increasingly damp mornings, even under covers. We've got dew. The clusters are quite tight, and so that water buildup in the middle leads to rots. So we are looking for, ideally, a mid to late season variety that we can actually then harvest in perfect condition and use gas-controlled storage atmospheres to preserve the product. These are 3 weeks old, using technology that we already have widely available in Scotland for controlled atmosphere blueberry storage. So we have access to these facilities. They look as good as new. What I think we need to do in order to reach that prime 3-week window that I showed you earlier is use covering systems that are well adapted to cherries. That will buy us 1 extra week in delay compared to the fruit tunnels that we're currently using. We need to use good, reliable varieties picked in good condition because they're tried and tested, in combination with controlled atmosphere storage. That buys us an additional 2 to 3 weeks. So you can suddenly see that from picking most of our cherries in Scotland in the beginning of August, with the use of these ideas, we can push to the end of August to that window. The model adapts well to soft fruit growers who have some of the infrastructure already, but I would also encourage existing broadacre arable farming businesses to consider 5, 6, 7, 8 acres of cherries as part of a diversified business. And if you would like to talk to me more about exploring this opportunity and coming on the journey with us, please take down my contact details and get in touch. Thank you for your time, ladies and gentlemen.